Debt, fear, relationships, the children, your health, work. When you want to give up and you need courage to continue, take heart and stay tuned as R.J. Jackson writes her signature message of hope on your heart. You don't have to live where you're dying, and you don't have to die where you're living. Like every show of Conversations on Courage, you'll be informed, inspired, and encouraged to find the courage you need to succeed at home, work, and in your business. Get your pen and paper. You'll want to take notes. And now, your host, R.J. Jackson, the Courage Giver.
Hello. Hola. Konnichiwa. It's me, your host, your girl, R.J. Jackson, the Courage Giver. I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Today's show is brought to you by Worldwide Women Speakers at worldwidewomenspeakers.com. I am excited. I'm super jazzed about today's show and about my guest today, Stephen Shade McMillan. We're going to have an awesome time sharing today as we talk about the Father's love. Listen, I couldn't think of a better day to talk about the Father's love than today. You see, my Father, He didn't tell me how to live. He lived, and He let me watch Him. He was the example of what life and love, God and family look like. And so I'm honored today on His birthday to be able to bring to you the Father's love. And as we talk about the Father's love today, we want to acknowledge all of our fathers, especially of our dads, all of our dads, those men who get down with their children, who get up with their children, who live and show their child what life is all about. And I'm not saying you have to do that a certain amount of times. I'm just saying thank you to those of you who do it. Shout out to all of our fathers, to all of our dads who love even when you can't stand your child's mother. Shout out to you. Shout out to all our dads and to all the fathers who respect their child's mother. Shout out to you. There's nothing like showing your child what love looks like by loving their mother. So today is a great day. We got a great show lined up for you today. And so as I think of fathers, I'm kind of reminded of one of my favorite movies. I'm not really a movie person, so when I share with you what my favorite movie is, I'm going to have to go back a little bit. But to this day, it is literally still one of my favorite shows, my favorite movies, and that is Mrs. Doubtfire. Now, Mrs. Doubtfire was a comedy, but to me it was a really serious movie because it was a movie about fatherhood. It was a movie about a man who did all he knew to do, made up some things to do just to be with his children. It's a movie about love and legacy, and I absolutely adore that movie. Our guest today reminds me of the Mrs. Doubtfire in so many ways because I have personally been able to watch him love on his child, do whatever it took to be with his child, make sacrifices to raise his child, and it's a wonderful story to me. And so that's why I'm honored today to bring our guest to you. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about him as we talk about today the Father's love. Our guest today, Stephen McMillan, has dedicated over half a decade of his life working with at-risk youth. He has worked with and assisted families who have been involved with child protective services, who need an extra boost, some encouragement, some guidance. He's served with passion and determination. He's taught administrators. He's been an administrator himself. He's been a supervisor, a social worker, a mentor, which we so desperately need today. Most importantly, he's a father. He's a dad. He's a single dad who knows about parenting and co-parenting. From the words of Stephen, he says he desires to see the next generation be a successful generation. Now, just before I bring him on, I want to tell you why I wanted him to be my guest on today's show as we honor our fathers, as I bring tribute to my dad. I want to tell you that I really wanted to honor Stephen because I have watched him with his son on several occasions, and just how he loves on his son, how he prepares his son for the next generation to be successful, because his son is a part of that generation, and how he's sacrificed to be with his son. And I wanted to honor him, and I wanted to nominate him for Single Dad through the Judge Maybelline Foundation, the Huff Awards. So as I began to look at the details and figure out what I needed to do to honor him, I realized that there were certain qualifications that I could not fulfill in order to honor him. And so I thought, well, he still should be honored. So, what do I have to do with it? So because I wasn't able to complete the application to honor him, I decided to do something I want to encourage each and every one of you who are listening to do. I heard Jim Rohn say one time, if you cannot find what you're looking for, create it. And that's what I did. I wasn't able to submit his name through the Judge Maybelline Foundation, which, by the way, Judge Maybelline honored my dad as a living legacy. So I wasn't able to do that for Stephen. So I thought, well, I'll just create my own award, and I will entitle it the Father's Love Award on behalf of my dad, William Bill the Boss Jackson. So it gives me great pleasure to honor and introduce to you today the first recipient of the Father's Love Award in honor of William Bill the Boss Jackson, my nephew, Stephen McMillan. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do for me right now, because, I just don't feel I should be doing this alone. So can you just give it up for Stephen? Give it up, give it up, give it up. Come on, come on. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So, Stephen, welcome. Welcome, Stephen. They gave you a standing ovation, dude. Yeah, he rocks.
I'm flattered. I am. I'm extremely flattered. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the award. I'm grateful to accept the award, especially on behalf of such a great man. I could use so many different adjectives to explain him and describe him. And I was telling somebody earlier, since it's my grandfather's birthday, that everything that I've done up to this point, I've always wanted to kind of be right in his eyes. And before he left, I think he got a chance to see so much that he put in me that I think I've done enough. I'm still always looking to do more, but I think he was finally able to rest knowing that he put so much in us, and he got to see some of it come back in the form of not only his kids, but his grandkids and his great-grandkids and everything else. So I'm extremely honored to accept it.
Well, thank you, and thanks for being our guest today. honestly, I couldn't think of anyone better to start with. This is going to be an annual thing, so we're going to be sharing this award, accepting the nominees for people each year, and they don't have to do anything stringent to acknowledge that they have a man in their life that they want to honor. And so we're going to make it really easy for people. So we want you to just make sure you stay connected so we can help celebrate the men in your life. Listen, it's true what they say. People, when they are appreciated, when they feel appreciated, they appreciate and value. And so that's what we want to do. But for now, we're going to jump right in. And so we want to hear from you, Stephen, single dad, dad. What's your story? Tell us your story.
Currently raising a 5-year-old. He'll be 6 in July. And me and his mother, we're extremely close in raising the child. But I learned early on that it wouldn't be ideal for us to be together. It wouldn't create a good environment for the child because when we're younger, or not even younger, but just in life, we make mistakes. And sometimes mistakes involve, having a child, which he isn't a mistake, but having a child with somebody who we don't foresee ourselves being with for the near future. So I learned that early on, and I didn't want it to affect him as far as forcing something that wouldn't work. So we found a happy medium. Although it did take a while to get to that happy medium, there were a lot of obstacles that I had to overcome, and I'm sure she had to overcome a lot too. But I think we're finally in a great place where we can co-parent, and it makes it a little easier on him. But he does struggle from time to time when you go from home to home, adjusting to different lifestyles. Over there he has siblings. Here he doesn't have any siblings, so I do have the luxury of being able to free up time and be able to do more. But when he was younger, he was extremely sick. He was always sick, and he had pneumonia in his lungs, and he had a lot of breathing problems. So we spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital. And in those times and in those long hospital nights, me and her were able to basically kind of see that everything was about more. When you see your child hooked up to a bunch of different cords and machines and everything else, and he's not able to breathe on his own for weeks at a time, it puts a lot of things in perspective. So I think that helped really bridge a gap and brought us a lot closer in raising this child. But with him, I really just enjoy doing everything that my dad never did with me. And I say that respectfully because I really can't get into all of the details of why he could or why he couldn't, because I kind of really don't know all of them. My dad passed away a few years back, and we didn't get close until he was probably maybe 2 years before he passed away, where I really got to learn him and know him. So in raising my son, who I've had joint custody of since he was 3 months old, I've kind of been freestyling. But what I've learned in freestyling is really it was just about the time and the effort. Once you put in the time and the effort and you do things over and over consistently, eventually they'll come. So a lot of things I just learned from watching. He was sick early on, so I would watch how the nurses interacted with him. I would watch how his mom interacted with him. I would watch how other people interacted with him. And I would piggyback off a lot of those things. And then I would incorporate the things I've always wanted done by my dad or by a man into those things. So that's kind of how I formed a parenting style. And from there, as my son got older, he gravitated towards some of the things that I gravitated towards, and that's kind of where we're at now. He's just at a filling out process. He's playing t-ball. He's playing soccer. He's on the back of my bike trailer. He dances around. He was previously a shy kid before, but he's starting to open up a little more. Extremely respectful, but that's kind of where we're at now. He's kind of finding himself, but he's never known a life without his father, and I always wanted that to be an important part because I know that struggle. I know we usually use the term daddy issues when we refer to women, but I think men have daddy issues, but we don't know how to say it. It sounds kind of soft to say daddy issues or, daddy struggles, and sometimes we carry that on and we put that off on other people. But I've learned now that I've had to struggle through, some daddy stuff myself, and I was able to tackle it before I had a child. So now I can parent him in the way I want to.
So you say, I'm going to start where you ended. You said a lot I want to talk about. You talk about daddy issues. What does that mean? Draw a picture for me. When you talk about men have daddy issues.
Well, in terms of my dad, I knew him. I seen him. We interacted, but we never interacted on my terms. We never interacted with things that I enjoyed to do. So in turn, he never really knew me because I was a basketball player, but he's never been to a basketball game. Or I was a baseball player. He's never been to a baseball game. Or I was a scholar, and I've always been on honor roll my whole life. But there was never really honor roll assemblies or consistency. So I pretended like it didn't matter because the biggest thing to me, and I was the youngest of I have 7 sisters and 2 brothers, but with him it was 5 girls. So for a long time I was the youngest. So it never bothered me that he wasn't around for me. For whatever reason, I always felt upset for my sisters because everybody else always had circumstances that they had to deal with. And to draw the picture completely, he was a great man. He wasn't a bad person. I think he had issues from preventing him from being the man he could have been to me, or the dad he could have been. Let me rephrase that, because he was a good man. I just don't think he knew how to be a dad. And his dad was in prison, so there was a cycle involved. My grandfather was in prison for at least 10 to 14 years, which I believe when I was a kid. So we would go visit him. So you could tell there was a trickle down effect. They knew how to be men, but I don't believe they had opportunity to be hands-on dads, and eventually the cycle had to stop. So I'm glad that I was the one to stop the cycle, but in turn it took a lot. Internally it took a lot.
And that's one of the reasons why I honor you today, because so often we get caught up in the cycle and we don't know how to get out, even though there are resources, there are tools, there are people put into our lives to help us get out. We take on the identity of daddy issues. We take on the identities of what didn't happen, and we become that person, and we live out that person versus living out who we were really created to be. So hats off to you, awards to you as well. You talked about you felt a little sorry for your sisters. Just talk to me about that for just a little bit, because there's so many things I want to ask you based on what you said. What's it like? I know me, I was a daddy's girl, but so often there are so many girls who don't have their father. How do you feel that affects them?
Well, I just think early on with me, I was the youngest, but it was like a little man syndrome. I always kind of took on the protector's role. So even in being the youngest of all of my sisters, which in time I have a younger sister now, but for a while I was the youngest. I always wanted to protect them. So I don't know if I was protecting them mentally or emotionally, and I don't even know if they even know this. Like, I don't even know if they knew that a lot of my resentment came from them. Like, we all knew him and dealt with him, but there's so much more he could have did, but I don't know if he knew how much more he could have done, if that makes any sense. And all of the things that he could have done more is the things that I'm doing. So I'm almost living his life and my life through my sons. My son was named after his 2 cousins. Both were murdered. Jermaine is his first name, he's named after my cousin Jermaine Varner, who we call Pops, and Lauren is his middle name, and he's named after my cousin Lauren, Lauren Hinkle, who was murdered also. Him and his child's mother was murdered in front of the child, and so much went into the name, and I named them that because when I heard their name, it didn't speak life. Like I was almost depressed. Like all of my friends were dying, and it was a weird time for me. So I wanted, when I called my son, for it to speak life. I wanted it to have some kind of voice that resonated. So now that I gave him a voice, I wanted to give him different passions. So I throw different things out there. So getting back to what you're saying, I'm sorry, about the women, it affects them because the first man you're supposed to fall in love with is your dad. And your dad sets the blueprint for how every man is supposed to treat you. So when you don't have that, you're almost kind of freestyling. You're figuring it out. But you're figuring it out with different men in different energies, and sometimes you bump into those men who also have daddy issues. So now you're trying to cure it together with no plan in sight. And there you have a relationship. There you have a relationship. And part of that would explain how my son came about.
And usually it's unhealthy. And so you're trying to take something that's unhealthy, which you don't have the tools to succeed with, and make it succeed. That's kind of what I hear you saying. And then you, as I heard you say earlier, you decide, well, this isn't going to work, so we have this child. So now we have to co-parent. So let's talk about that, because there are a lot of single dads, a lot of single moms who are having to co-parent. Although there are some missing dads, there are dads who are present, such as yourself, and you're having to co-parent, and sometimes that gets kind of difficult. I can imagine that, you're not on the same page, you don't live in the same house, you have rules, she has rules. So let's talk about that. What words of courage would you give for parents regarding co-parenting?
Communication. Communication is the biggest thing. And even in so, I learned something from one of my aunts, and she had told me that everything is not going to bother everybody. So if something bothers you, you have to fix it. So there may be something I may get frustrated with that may happen at his mom's house, or that may happen at school, or may happen under her watch, which is never anything bad, because she's a great mom. So it's never anything to the extent. It's just, everybody likes things done the way they want them done, so you have to almost get out of your own way. So there may be something that happens there. In my mind, it can't affect me as much because I have 5 days to change it when he comes back. Or I have 3 days to change it when he comes back, and then he goes there. It could be something as small as, his hair didn't get washed. Well, there's only one way to fix it. Would you going to call and complain about it and have an argument about it for 3 days, or are you going to wash it? I choose to wash it. It's a moot point. So that was also a learned behavior, where you can't call and complain about every situation is going to be different. So you almost have to take into account different things that other people have going on in their home, and not be as selfish as to think that everything is supposed to take place with your child. Because my child's mother has other children who she cares for and who she has to give resources to and love to. So in that very moment, I kind of have to take those selfish thoughts away and say, well, you know what? I have the ability to give him maybe a little more time and maybe a little more resources. So why don't I correct that? And that would usually help. I know it helped me in co-parenting, but I had to get out of my own way.
You're listening to Conversations on Courage with our host, R.J. Jackson, the Courage Giver. Quick, call your friends and invite them to listen in.
You could have all the money in your hands, all the possessions anyone could ever have, but it's all worthless treasure. True worth is only measured not by what you got, but what you got in your heart. You can have everything, but what does it mean? Oh, it means nothing, yeah. If you don't stand then you could look in the mirror, be proud of looking back at you. Define your life you're living, know what you take or what you're giving. And if you bet on love, there's no way you ever lose. Take a stand, make a stand for what's right. It's always worth the fight. Oh, means nothing, yeah, yeah.
If you don't stand for something,
you can't just talk the talk. You gotta walk the walk.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. It all means nothing, yeah.
If you don't stand for something, stand for something. I'll stand up for you.
Stand for respect
and dignity.
and if that's all you got,
Then that's all you need.
and without that, you don't have a thing. Oh, no, no.
Rise up, love, lift your hand. I stand with you cause I understand. Ain't here to judge, just take a stand. The greater plan, creator's plan. Let's all rise like the day began. Reach out and touch with the Savior's hands. On the rock we stand like the native land. Let the waves of love be the waves of man.
Nothing, yeah.
If you don't stand for something, stand for something.
You can't just talk the talk.
No.
You gotta walk the walk. Yes, you do. It all means nothing. Yeah, yeah.
If you don't stand for something, stand for something. I'll stand up for you. I'll stand up for you. I'll stand up for you. I'll stand up for you.
Yes, I will.
Yes, I will.
Hello, this is Victoria Rashawn, and I'm calling to give my father the biggest shout-out ever, Morris Streeter. What a fabulous dad. I miss you, even though it's been several years that you've gone on, but I just want to say thank you for your unconditional love. Happy Father's Day, Dad.
Stay tuned. Coming up next, RJ brings her special guest to the table for more authentic and down-to-earth conversations on courage.
All right. So if you're just joining us, we want to say welcome to the table where the conversation is authentic, it's down to earth, it's life-giving and real. We want to tell you that we are honored to have the first ever recipient for the Father's Love Award in honor of William Bill the Boss Jackson, Mr. Stephen Quote Shade McMillan as our guest today. And we were talking about co-parenting. And Stephen said, we got to move out the way. We got to move. So right before the song, we were talking about sometimes that's difficult for people to do, move out the way. Because what they stand for is all they want to be done. But when you're co-parenting, you got to work together. So, Stephen, let's talk about how you said it's a learned behavior. How do you learn to move out of the way and compromise in a relationship where you both have your values, what you stand for? How do you do that? What do you say?
Well, I guess I technically kind of didn't have a choice. And part of it goes back to, hold on with that paper, Jermaine. Part of it goes back to even when I was going through when I was going to get joint custody of my son, his mother at the time, and I can't quote her, but that's how I felt like she thought that me getting joint custody meant that she was supposed to do as a mother. But in reality, it was me wanting to wake up to my son. It was me regretting not being able to wake up to my son every day, because that's the original plan. when you have a kid. You want to be with your kid, wake up with your kid every day. It was kind of my regrets of not being able to wake up with my son every day. So let me salvage what I can out of what I just did. So in doing that, the repairing had to start right after that. So the process became longer and longer because it was more internal. It was more of, well, does he think that I can't do this, that? And part of it was because she had done a lot of it on her own. Prior to that, her oldest son's father had passed away or was murdered, So a lot of things had been done on her own. So she had to transform mentally and look at it as, oh, he just wants to be a dad. And I had to look at it as, I had to change my mindset as she's been doing a lot of it on her own by no fault of her own for a while. So now we almost had to come to a meeting of the minds and, tell each other like, okay, we both have the same agenda. We're just moving in opposite directions. So let's see what we can do to at least move in the right direction. And I believe once we did that, his energy changed. Like I said, I said before, he was extremely shy. Now he's coming out of his shell a little more. He's opening up a little more. He's figuring out who he is a little more. So I think that helps.
Compromising, communicating, having the courage to say my way isn't necessarily the right way, but let's see how we can pull this together and make it the best way for our child. Wow, that's really powerful right there. And to figure that out and say, well, I didn't have a dad that showed me how to do it. You had to have someone who showed you something. Who was that someone for you?
Oh, I had my grandfather. My grandfather was it's crazy because my grandfather, everybody called him Dad. My friends' friends, my cousin's friends, like everybody knew him as Dad, almost to the point where if you didn't know him, you would think he had 100 kids. But he was, that's what he was. He was everybody's dad. And he showed me everything. He gave me the blueprint without giving me without me even knowing it. So he was preparing me every day prior to having a child. And then when I had one, he had got sick. So I went back into the home to help take care of him. And that was his reward, to watch everything he put into me kind of come out in a child. So my grandfather was real huge. I had a mentor growing up, Mr. Fabor. He was real huge in my life. So there were men and there were people who I could go to and I could kind of get some of those fatherly things that I needed there to fill those voids. There was still something missing because it's not your dad, but there were those men who I could go to and get some of those things, and I kind of think that's what gets lost in the whole Happy Father's Day to me single mother thing. Whereas I understand there may be some issues to where you may not have a dad or somebody to congratulate, or you may not your child's father and you are at odds, but there has to be somebody that you want to celebrate on a day like that, as opposed to turning a day that's supposed to be about everything great about men in the world and making it about you. And that goes to getting out of your own way too.
So what you're referring to, if I'm hearing you correctly, is on Father's Day, which is coming up soon. On Father's Day, when women take that day and they say to other women, Happy Father's Day, I hear you saying that's disrespectful. It gets under your skin. What you saying? Talk to me about that.
I don't even log on social networks a week prior to Father's Day, and I try to log off at least for 2 days after Father's Day. Because we take the day, we build up this whole day, which I almost feel like doesn't get enough credit anyway, but we build it up, and the day comes, and now it's almost a chance. It's not about you celebrating you. It's a chance to take a shot at him. So when we're, Happy Father's Day to me. I take care of my kid. Da, da, da. You're almost taking it away from the people who you could mention or who you could shout out or who you could celebrate. And when we were growing up, our parents told us if you don't have nothing nice to say, you don't say nothing at all. You never really see the men say, oh, well, Happy Mother's Day to me. The validation in Father's Day has kind of been lost, so it almost feels like Happy Single Mother / Father's Day. So we're sharing it. We're sharing a day. We're sharing a day with single mothers and deadbeats and great fathers. So we don't have a day. We have a third of a day.
What do you suppose should happen to get that day back?
I think that we should find somebody, and I'm sure there is somebody, an uncle, a brother, a cousin, a mentor, a teacher, that we could just highlight and say, hey, my dad isn't there, my child isn't there, or my child's father isn't there, but this man spoke life into me, or this person did this for me, and let's just Happy Father's Day to him, or just Happy Father's Day to all of the other fathers. But we're almost at a point where when we bash the men who aren't in their children's lives, we give them a bigger platform than we do the fathers. It's almost like they become more popular. It's almost like like they get all the energy. Why would they want to be the father now? They've already got all the attention. They have your attention every day.
It goes back to what I said earlier. When people are appreciated, they appreciate and value. So let me just take a pause for the cause and just go back and appreciate Martin Polk, who covered the song with his daughter Joy, Stand Up. You can find the link to their site on our site, rjjackson.live, and there's nothing like appreciating somebody and giving somebody a shout out. So shout out to the fathers. Day is your day.
Hello, my name is Danielle, and this shout out is going to my fiancé, Joel Ramos. We just want to wish him a happy Father's Day. He takes such wonderful care of our children and our home, and he just makes our hearts so happy, and we're so blessed to have you. So happy Father's Day, love. We love you so much.
Can be so hard to define. At times it seems impossible to find. He's the one who works that 9 to 5 and midnight shift. Sometimes we don't see him, but he always brings us gifts. A father is that heavy hand when you know that you've done wrong.
Take you fishing. And he'd work heavy overtime all week long. Well, he'd get up anyway on Saturday morning and he'd take you and fall asleep right on the bank with the fish on his hook and everything. But you didn't care. You were just glad to be with him. And how about your sister? when she went on her first date? Your dad would call the guy in the house, embarrass him, ask him all kinds of questions about his mom, dad, and everything. And you just sit back and laugh. And you thought, I'm not going to treat my children that way when I have kids. But you're wrong. You'll do it because you love them the way your dad loves you.
How many times have you gone to bed not knowing if he's home? And then he'd come in late that night and look into your room. He's the one who's gone to war, and he might not come back. Fighting for his family because that's all he has. Father, sometimes we forget just who you are, but we still love you. Father, you're in our hearts, whether near or far, always thinking of you. And when it's time for you to leave and go out on your own, you see his love and wisdom now that you are grown. His little girl is a woman now with the man that she loves so. Open your heart and understand it's hard for him to let go. Father, sometimes we forget just who you are, but we still love you. Oh, Father, you're in our hearts, whether near or far, always thinking of you. Yeah, Father, sometimes we forget just who you are, but we still love you. Oh, Father, yeah, you're in our hearts, whether near or far, always thinking of you. You got a special place in our hearts.
I love you, Dad. Now can I borrow the car?
You're listening to Conversations on Courage with your host, R.J. Jackson, the Courage Giver. Today's show is brought to you by Worldwide Women Speakers, www.worldwidewomenspeakers.com. Our guest today is the first recipient of the Father's Love Award in honor of William Bill the Boss Jackson, Stephen McMillan. We're talking about fatherhood. We're talking about the love of the Father. So, Stephen, we were talking just before that amazing song called Father, a tribute to all dads by Taylor Made Jazz, which is actually in Buffalo, New York. We were talking about co-parenting and parenting. I want to talk to you about being a single dad for just a moment. And as we talked about Father's Day, as a single dad, do you find that there's a stigma that comes with being a single dad? Do people look at you or treat you different?
I think they treat me as if I'm rare, which I don't. I think it fits a narrative, but I think it fits a media narrative. I think there's an idea that men, that there aren't more men that are in their child's life or that have joint custody of their kids or full custody of their kids or take care of their kids. And I think it's almost media driven. You always hear like numbers being thrown out. And maybe it's me. Like I've talked to people and said, well, maybe I'm naive because I don't have any friends who don't take care of their kids. And if somebody has friends who doesn't take care of their kids, I don't see why a man could hang with another man who doesn't take care of his kids without saying something to him. But for the most part, I think we become victims of our eyes. So there may be a single mother who may say, oh, well, all I see is women with their sons at the football field. It's because you're a woman with your son at the football field. So that's almost what your eyes are trained to see. So in your mind, there's 100 women. You won't see the 100 men because you identify with what you identify with. For whatever reason, everywhere I go, I'm always counting men. So I'm guilty of it too. I'm like, oh, man, look at him with his dad. Look at him. I was in the store today on my lunch break, and there were 5 people in the store at the time. One guy was with his son alone. Another guy was with his wife and his girlfriend and his son. I don't know who she was to him. And then there was me. Out of the 5 people, there were 3 guys in the store. All 3 of them were dads. But there may be a woman who's her kid's father doesn't take care of her child. So her mind isn't trained to see all of the good things that other men are doing, and they don't take the mental note. So there's a stigma, but I think it kind of plays both ways.
That's like when you buy a car. Before you purchase that car, you like never saw that car on the road ever. But as soon as you buy that car, bam, oop, there it is. Oh, right, there it is again.
Right, and that's exactly how it is. So when I hear people say like, oh man, well, 60% of the men don't take care of the kids, I'm like, where was this survey? When did I get the email? Like, I don't. Where are the numbers coming from? Because all I see is men with their children. But I think that's what my mind is trained to look for.
It's a good thing to see men with their children, whether it's their son or their daughter, because that's how God designed it to be. And so when you see that, it's good. And I think as women, we should, and as men as well, we should acknowledge people. Like when we see dads out or whatever, we should thank them for being there. I teach parenting, and one of the things I do when I start my parenting class is I celebrate all the men in attendance. I give them an award for being there because I'm a firm believer when we appreciate people, people appreciate and value. So I want to say how much I appreciate you being here today, and not just you, all of our listeners who are here with us today. I can tell we have listeners from Texas, from New York, from California, Ohio. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and being a part of this authentic conversation. Our desire is that it will cause transformation in your life. Now, we're almost out of time, but just before we go, I'd like to know, as a single dad, what's your relationship with your son like, especially since you don't see him like every day? So what's that like? What do you guys do together? I know he's there with you. I don't know if he wants to say hello with you or not, but let me know.
Hi.
Hi, what's your name?
Jermaine.
Jermaine. How old are you, Jermaine?
5.
5. Are you hanging out with your dad?
Yes.
Awesome. What do you like doing while you're with your dad?
Sitting down with him.
You like sitting down with him? Do you guys have like cool talks and things like that?
No.
No? Well, let me ask your dad if you guys have cool talks and things like that. So what do you guys like to do, Stephen? Because I'm assuming he doesn't think your talks are cool.
Yeah, I don't know what you just said to him. He just ducked under the cover.
I just asked him if you and him have cool talks, and he said no. I said, well, let me ask your dad if you guys have cool talks. So what do you guys like to do? What do you do? One reason why I'm asking you this, because you mentioned early on that you and your dad did things, but he didn't necessarily do things you like. So that meant he didn't get to know you. So if he didn't know you, he couldn't enhance your gifts and your talents and help you be the best person you were created to be. So what do you do for your son that he likes to help him be the best person that he was created to be?
We big on the homework and reading thing. I coach 14, 15-year-old basketball, 14, 15U. So he's always on the road with me. He's pretty much been everywhere. For Christmas, he only gets 3 gifts, but he gets to choose his 3 gifts, and we put the rest of the money up for a trip. So this year was Disney World. The year prior was Delaware. The year prior was Houston. The year prior to that was New York City, because I feel like he'll remember those experiences more than he'll remember the wrestler that he threw away. He can get whatever gifts he wants, but he only gets 3. So we're not going to overload him with toys. We're going to fill the house in his life with more experiences. So we just came back from Disney World last week. Prior to that, we went to Clearwater Beach for Easter break. I just want him to see more things and get out and do more things. So we travel. He's probably been to at least 9 or 10 different states, maybe more, but 9 or 10. Just thinking offhand with the basketball team or just with me or just with vacation. So that's a big thing. I do the slow roll every Monday, which is a 10-mile bike ride. He rides in the trailer on the back for the slow roll because he likes to people watch. This is his 2nd year of T-ball. So we get out, we throw the ball together, teach him how to bat together. We usually at the park once a week doing that. He's playing soccer. He just finished his 2nd soccer season Saturday. So we got a soccer ball here. We usually play that together. And just hang out. Just, let him, give him a chance to be a kid. Give him a chance to be a kid. So everything we do together. It's my best friend. Yeah, that's it. I probably can go on and on.
Wow. I can't believe you're trying to think of more. We run out of time just by y'all trips.
Yeah, I probably can go on and on, but yeah, we hang out together all the time.
Oh, that's so cool. And experiences make us rich. And like you said, they won't remember the G.I. Joe, but they will remember the trips and the time you spent with them. I just ask 2 more questions for you because we are really running out of time. But you said earlier that he has other siblings. So I don't know if you can speak to that or not, but I'm just curious. Do you, as your son's father, ever get the other children and take them and be involved in their life as well? I don't know what the relationship is, so I'm not trying to blast you out. I'm just looking at family dynamics.
Oh, God, yes. His sister Taylor is with me all the time. She has probably got as many clothes over here as he does. And me and her dad are extremely cool, so Jermaine goes over her dad's house, and she comes over here and spends the night on the weekends. And she plays baseball, too, so they're kind of all in the same thing. So usually when he comes, she's following right behind with a book bag as soon as I'm picking him up off the bus. That's already packed for some odd reason. Like they conjured up something on the bus and they figured out they was going. So they both go to summer camp together. But yeah, me and his sister's dad has a great relationship. So Jermaine goes over there. Taylor comes over here most of the time. But yeah, you can go up in Jermaine's room and she's got as much stuff up there as Jermaine does.
Oh, how cool is that? And so what words, thank you so much for sharing that. What words, final words should I say, of encouragement, of acknowledgement, of transformation would you share with a father who might be listening today or at some other time that would encourage their heart?
Just get involved. If you're not involved in your kid's life, just get involved in your kid's life. You're missing out on a blessing. You're breaking a cycle. You're breaking a curse. You giving back. You feeding the soul. I talk a lot about feeding the soul, man. You don't know how valuable it is until your soul is hungry. So you got to get back and you got to live through your kids. You have to. It's so gratifying, and it'll do so much more for yourself and so much more for your self-confidence and just so much more for you as a person to watch something that you produce grow into something that you can keep giving back to every day.
Those are life-giving words of encouragement. They are priceless. And this is why today, June 5th, as we remember and honor William Bill the Boss Jackson. We honor Stephen McMillan, the first recipient of the Father's Love Award in honor of William Bill the Boss Jackson.
I'm the man.
Stephen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me at the table today, for the conversation that has been so rich and so rewarding and so filling for our soul. You have given us some soul food today here on Conversations on Courage. And we just say thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And we certainly we look forward to staying connected with you as well. And for you, our listening audience, listen, we're nothing, absolutely nothing without you. So for you and for Stephen, this applause.
Thank you for joining us for Conversations on Courage. Now that you've been inspired, informed, and encouraged, it's time for you to take action. So head on over to thecouragegiver.com. That's thecouragegiver.com and connect with RJ for a personal conversation on courage. She's waiting to help you take the risk you need to succeed.